We've all heard today that you need a lot of data to do machine learning. Actually, the most exciting thing is how do I learn without any data, or almost any data? Well, how do we do it? Human beings can learn to distinguish dogs and cats without having to be trained on thousands and thousands of images. Why? Because we've been doing it all our lives, but in different contexts. We learn by doing. Not only by doing in our lifetime, but by doing over evolution. For hundreds of millions of years, animals and human beings have been learning to distinguish. We're doing the same thing in real life with real data from things like machines, health data, engine data, service records. We train machines on all kinds of data, and that helps machines do a new piece of machine learning with almost no data. Just a few failures, just a few faults, and you're able to learn exactly how to distinguish and detect faults just because we've seen so much data in the past. And we call this technology TimeNet, and the technology underneath, technically it's called transfer learning. The second way we learn, and we've heard in the last session about imagination. We're able to learn because our minds can imagine the future. There is no data about the future. So how on earth would you learn from that? Well, we're learning by modeling the future, by modeling a very complex supply chain and running that simulation again and again to generate lots of data, which didn't exist because we are talking about the future. This is called reinforcement learning. And this is another way we're doing it in practice. It's large retailers, large supply chains are being reimagined, and machines are being trained to decide on the fly by imagining the future. And the third, which I really like, is to learn by reasoning. For example, to read. Human beings can read a document without having been trained to detect what's an invoice number, what's a SWIFT code, how to read a piping and instrumentation diagram. We can read very easily most of the time. We can do this by deduction. What we're talking about is learning to read without having to train the machine at all. We give it one example and it learns to deduce how to read because it uses the technology of Sherlock Holmes. If you rule out what is impossible, whatever is left is the only way to do things. And as we call it, a new way of doing things called Neuro-Deductive Learning. The star is because it's unpublished and it's going to come out next month. 3 things to take away: transfer learning, reinforcement learning, neuro-deductive learning. You don't need a lot of data, but you need smart technology.